Welcome to the Self Careapist Podcast. Join me, Lorain Moorehead, a licensed psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, and EMDR consultant, along with expert guests as we explore the approaches and modalities we've used and developed to support our clients' success. Our conversations and stories are designed to inspire new and seasoned clinicians to stay curious, prioritize self-care, and never stop learning. Today, our guest is Melissa Lapides, a licensed marriage and family therapist with nearly 2 decades of experience specializing in trauma and complex trauma. Her work is grounded in a deep understanding of attachment wounds, early childhood experiences, and relational trauma. After years of providing trauma-informed training for professionals, she now focuses exclusively on clinical work, offering an integrative mind-body approach. We discuss how early attachment experiences can impact future relationships with people and other favorite family members, how trauma is about the impact of events, not the events themselves, and the core tenets of trauma-informed care. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here too. Could you give us a little bit more background on the work that you're doing now?
Yeah. So my work mostly focuses on early childhood attachment trauma, which is complex trauma. And it focuses on how that shows up in all of our relationships. First and foremost, the relationship with ourselves, but our relationship with our significant others, our children, our family, and even our work all will be reflective of those attachment wounds that we're still holding inside. And so out of all the work that I've done, I find this to be the most powerful because it really goes back to the root of why we are experiencing whatever we're experiencing that doesn't feel good or doesn't feel aligned or feels dysfunctional in some way. And so for me, it is addressing the root instead of working with just the symptoms.
You give us a little bit of background about what complex trauma might entail?
Yeah, because I think it's so misunderstood. And so many clients, when I tell them they have complex trauma, it's like this big, scary thing, it sounds like. And actually, so many people are walking around with complex trauma that don't even know what it is, because when we think of trauma, we often think about like this big horrific event happening, like a car accident or a natural disaster. And that's not really what trauma is. Trauma is not about the event that happened, but it is about how we are impacted by the event. 3 people could go through the same thing, and it may only have created a traumatic experience for one of those people. So it really depends on the person's biological makeup and psychological makeup and how they perceive the event. Now, when we talk about complex trauma is something that our system perceives as a threat to our survival over a long period of time. So when we talk about complex trauma, especially in relation to our early childhood experiences, it can often look like a parent that wasn't emotionally available, or a parent that was emotionally dysregulated, or a parent that had drug or alcohol problems. A lot of times complex trauma is passed through the generations. We see a lot of religious and cultural trauma that turns up as complex trauma. So it's any long period of something that is happening that keeps you stuck in survival mode, where our nervous system is operating outside of where its healthy limits are. And then our response to whatever it is that we're in relationship with is a survival response instead of a healthy response. So the symptoms of complex trauma are issues with your memory. You have issues, we know now, like our digestive system takes an impact with complex trauma. Autoimmune diseases often arise out of complex trauma. Relational issues, depression, anxiety. So when we experience these things over a long period of time, it's not just like the flashbacks and the moments of that one event, but it's this long period of impact on your body because your body wasn't operating in a functional way for so long that it creates a whole plethora of things that can look like symptoms of anxiety, depression, even addiction, like underneath it all. This is why I love getting to the root, because a lot of times these things that we think are mental health issues that are anxiety or depression or addiction issues, they come from complex trauma. And when we really can look under a magnifying glass at our early childhood development, it becomes really apparent why those symptoms are presenting, because there is something much deeper that is happening or has happened and is continuing to happen in our nervous system response. And then it creates a way of behaving in the world and in relationship that is not healthy and dysfunctional. And sometimes people deal with the symptoms and never really get to the root. And then it's like just trying to like do whack-a-mole. It's like just putting the Band-Aid on all these things, but the root of it isn't really being addressed. And that's why I think it's so important to look deeper and go back to the childhood stuff.
Oh, you make a great point that our bodies are really adaptive. And so they rise to the occasion of what we need them to do. And in the long term, that can have some real impacts on our health and well-being. And in the short term, it's really amazing how our bodies can adapt even to a negative situation with a strategy that we wouldn't consider helpful or effective over time, but can really provide some kind of relief in the short term.
And it is our body's natural protective mechanism to do those adaptations, because when we're little, we need to adapt to what our family needs us to be in order to stay connected and loved and cared for by our family of origin. But when we're older, a lot of times those adaptive mechanisms, they're not serving us anymore. So they did take care of us when we were little, and we needed those adaptive mechanisms to be turned on. And thank goodness for our nervous system being able to take care of us in that way. But as we become adults, oftentimes those mechanisms are really causing us harm and we don't even notice. And sometimes they look good. That's the thing, is like not everybody's trauma is like they suffer with drugs and alcohol or overeating. Sometimes it's people that are highly successful that have put all of their focus into work because it's actually a defense mechanism, or it's a way to disassociate from what they're feeling. So even exercise can be a trauma response, right? It could be a coping mechanism that looks good, but it's actually unhealthy when you look at where it's coming from.
Yeah, the way I see that play out is when I'm meeting with a new client oftentimes and I ask them, have you experienced any trauma? Their response is no. They're not searching out a trauma therapist. They're maybe have gone to the doctor and realized they have high blood pressure. They have autoimmune symptoms, like you've mentioned. They're experiencing other types of things. And when I ask, they're like, I thought it was a heart issue, but it turned out to be anxiety. So my doctor referred me. Even when presented with the option, they're not realizing that what they experienced daily throughout childhood could be trauma. What do you find when they're realizing I can relate this to some of the things that I went through, or those did impact me?
I think it's validating for most people. Mm-hmm. As you start to dig in with people, it becomes more and more validating of their experiences. We start to uncover what's happened in their childhood that they've normalized. It's shocking to understand that actually wasn't healthy, the way that your mom treated you or the way that your parents were interacting with each other. And it's mind-blowing for people to really get that these things impacted them in a certain way that has created certain behaviors and ways of being in the world and in relationship that are actually causing them more struggle.
Yeah, so true. What are some of the things you see in terms of how a person's parents interacted with each other and the ways that they experienced that as a kid? How do you see that play out in attachment as adults? I know you talk a lot about attachment in your work. What are some of those linkages that you see?
Yeah, I love attachment theory. And I think that our attachment wounds are complex trauma. It's like one and the same. Our attachment issues are what create complex trauma in us. And so when a parent doesn't know how to be emotionally validating in those younger years and attuned and present with their children, it creates attachment issues. And those attachment issues become complex trauma. And when somebody has an attachment issue, let's talk a little bit about what that is and what that looks like. Early childhood attachment, when we have caregivers that can attune and validate our emotions. I always give the example of a kid falls off a bike and gets hurt, but not too hurt, right? Mm-hmm. And one mom might say, get up, keep going, you're okay. And another mom will say, that must have really hurt. Let me help you get up and get back on the bike. The first mom did not validate the emotional experience of the child. So the child's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be hurt, I guess. Maybe this really isn't true that I'm hurt. And they question their own emotions, and it creates a lot of insecurity unconsciously in children when they're not met emotionally. The mom that says, oh, I see that hurt, then the kid's nervous system can regulate through that healthy mirroring, and they feel secure inside because they've been seen and felt in a way that mirrors where they actually are internally. When you're missed with that early mirroring, you become insecure because you don't trust your body's own signals and felt experiences. And that plays out through life as insecurity. We see people that don't trust themselves, that are always looking for answers outside of themselves, that don't feel like they can make decisions without talking to people and getting validation from others. And that's what we call insecure attachment. Being securely attached creates a sense of authentic security inside of ourselves, so we feel confident throughout life to make decisions based on what we actually feel inside versus needing that outside validation all the time.
I think a common misconception is that people realize I felt this certain way in my attachments as a child, and so I know what the problem was, and now I don't want those. I want secure attachments. And then they're surprised when they end up in partnerships and friendships and relationships in general, like you said, that aren't those secure attachments that they crave. It's so interesting how our bodies, even in recognizing where things went wrong, find comfort in duplicating and playing out those same scenarios rather than automatically pursuing or knowing how to pursue secure attachments.
Yeah, our bodies seek familiarity. Like we equate safety and familiarity, and we create feeling good when we feel things that are familiar, right? Like if you always ate chocolate ice cream, your mom gave you chocolate ice cream when you were little, it's going to be comforting like throughout your life. And so we seek things that are familiar, but I always tell my clients familiarity isn't always healthy. We have to use our intellect to differentiate, but our body, our somatic experiences, and the way that we feel is going to be uncomfortable first in an unfamiliar space. Even if it's healthier for us, it feels uncomfortable because it's not familiar. And so you have to let the mind take over the experience that your body is seeking sometimes for comfort, and really intellectualize that, okay, this isn't healthy and I need to choose a different experience, even if it's not what I'm familiar with. And that's where we could start to heal the attachment wounds by making healthier choices for ourselves. But we also have to do the work through the body and through our felt experience to re-teach ourselves that healthy needs to be comfortable for us. And we've got to get comfortable being healthy. So many people, when they start to do that, it's like peace and safety feel uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
they're like, this is boring. I don't
This is
like this. I need
boring.
to go back to
Exactly.
chaos, right?
Exactly. This isn't exciting. I don't think there's passion there.
Yeah.
And sometimes the feeling of passion was so closely linked to being scared and the not knowing that when you have this comfort, it feels like, where's the rest of it?
Totally. Or they seek that high, that
Yeah.
chaos high that really like makes you feel, ooh, this is exciting, but it's not. It's chaos and it's
Yeah.
dysfunction. And I always tell my clients, get comfortable being bored. Like, get really comfortable being bored in relationships and with your life because boredom is often synonymous with peace. And your body doesn't know that. And you're perceiving peace as boredom, but you have to let yourself attune to that nothingness, to that steadiness, right? When you've had chaos your whole life or dysfunction, it's really unfamiliar. And we can often reject it at first because of the unfamiliarity of it. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. It's not
Yeah.
comfortable to make changes. It's rewarding after you've crossed the bridge and you've changed it. Then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been operating that other way my whole life. But making the change, it takes getting used to some discomfort because growth isn't always easy. It's sometimes easier to stay the same, even though it's painful.
Yeah. But you mentioned that it's sort of a different approach to processing that can really help take someone beyond changing their behaviors and consciously thinking, I'm going to do this time. I'm going to do this. There's really, we call it a bottom up processing approach that allows someone's body to make that change and allows their nervous system to start to make that shift that allows them then to show up differently in future situations. Recently, there's been a lot of research about bottom up approaches. I think even recently the APA started to recognize the benefit. How do you incorporate them in your work with clients?
I like to give people a new felt experience because oftentimes when you grow up in chaos, you don't even know what you're going for. You don't even know what peace feels like. Your body has no clue. It's never felt it. I know for me, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. I never felt that feeling before. So I didn't even know what I was moving towards. And supporting my clients to have that felt experience of peace in their body by teaching them through having more somatic awareness and taking them through processes of releasing stress in the body and creating some kind of reference for a new experience is really helpful because you will keep going back to the same thing if you don't know that different thing that you're going towards.
What are some signs to you that someone is disconnected from their body? What are you picking up on?
They talk a lot. Right? When people talk a lot and intellectualize things, they're disconnected from their body. So it's either that or they're shut down and they don't talk at all. Outside of the window of tolerance where we are connected to our body and our stress can be operating in a healthy way, on the top of that is like that hyper aroused, anxious person who's talking a lot about it. And then on the opposite end, like the bottom of the window is that shut down, right? That disassociated kind of person. When I see somebody that's on either end of the spectrum, it's like, oh yeah, they're not in their bodies and we need to work at helping them have more awareness of where they're at and just taking those moments for the first time with people to say, notice what's happening inside of you right now. So many people are like, well, what do you mean? Like, what, inside of me, what? So that's a real cue that like, wow, this person's been living their life outside of their body and outside of their window of tolerance. And it takes something, it's like building a muscle to build that awareness and then build that new experience inside for your body to be able to reacclimate to something else. And then from that bottom approach of learning to first feel a different way and be connected to your body, it then teaches you to be connected to other things in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's a great description. You mentioned a little bit about your own journey of coming up with a dysfunctional family. How did that experience and the experiences that you endured as a kid lead you to this journey. What was the process like for you to be now treating clients with similar backgrounds potentially?
This is why I do what I do, because I struggled so much. I came from a really abusive father and a mother that couldn't protect us and know how to make healthy choices. And when I went to get married, I chose somebody like my father because I didn't do the healing, and I recreated that trauma all over in my family. And after I realized I started going to therapy for my own childhood stuff, but then I already recreated it in my life. And so I'm like, this is such a big journey to unwind the mess that I've made because I didn't clean it up before I chose a partner and had kids. So it's my greatest joy to be able to help people not do that and recreate their early childhood trauma or unwind it after they've made the big mess that I made in my life. Right?
Yeah, you're saying something so important. I think one piece of it is that I see people say, well, I'm busy now. This can wait. I don't need to focus on this right now. And what a gift it is when you're able to take the time to do it just because the time is now. Because when future things come up, illness, meeting a partner, dating, having kids, because that's a big one. How magical to be able to see the progress that you've made in your work when those big moments come along. And to your point, the other piece is it's never too late, because no matter how far you've gotten into your next family, how far you've gotten into your relationship, it's work that you benefit from.
Absolutely. I mean, I did it in my 40s, like really cut those patterns out and changed my life completely. And while I think it's amazing to do in your 20s, and I love my young people that show up and want to do the work, and it feels super rewarding because then they won't carry that on. It is never too late to start feeling peace inside. Never. And I think it's the greatest gift that we can give to ourselves is to have that experience in this lifetime. And I recognize it's a privilege. It's really a privilege to have the time to work on yourself. And not everybody has that privilege. So many people are stuck in those situations where the trauma is just being perpetuated. And so I always tell people, if they have the time and the resources, like, it's literally the greatest thing you could ever give to yourself.
Yeah. For therapists wanting to work more with CPTSD, are there any things that helped you learn the work that you're doing?
Just gathering as much information as possible. I also think it's our responsibility as therapists not to take every client that shows up in our inbox, because we have to make sure that we feel confident and competent that that's in our scope. And I often see people taking on clients that are far out of their scope or their realm of competence. I know we want to be heroes sometimes as helpers and healers, but not every client is for us either. And we need to be really mindful about that. I think that we are choosing the right therapeutic relationships as well as practitioners.
I love an expert. I think there's, just to keep going with safety and security, there's such a feeling of security to go to someone, whatever industry, if it's fitness, if it's a doctor for a specific issue that has seen the issue 100 times, knows the different strategies to make it effective, and just how good that feels as a client to be in that relationship. And to your point, to go to a therapist that has a specific niche and knows the ins and outs of treating that population can just feel so good to the client to know I'm not going to stump them. I'm not going to say anything they can't handle, and they know how to get me over to the other side from this.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
What are some of the strategies that you incorporate in your work with folks? You've mentioned things like journaling. What else do you pull into your work with clients?
I do a lot of inner child and parts work. I do a lot of somatic work, and I do a lot of practical, strategical, okay, let's look at all the things pending and organize what's most important and tackle this first, because a lot of people come in and they're so confused about what to even work on. So I like to look at like order of operations and look at what's the most pressing stuff first and really organize myself and my client and our goals to work on very methodically.
This is important because you mentioned window of tolerance earlier. And if you're outside your window of tolerance, it really compromises executive functioning. So our ability to put things in order, prioritize, carry through tasks is really compromised. So it makes a lot of sense to me that you take time to really work on some of those executive functioning pieces as well.
Yeah. Getting people to first be able to understand their nervous system responses and work on their nervous system is often the most helpful place to start, because without that, you're just recreating messes. You're recreating messes when you continue to operate outside of your nervous system. It's like you're going to help a client build a house, but the foundation of the house is all cracked up and not secure. So we want to work from that foundation first and build a secure foundation, and then start to build the walls and the windows and the doors and all the things that are going to accessorize the house. But we have to look at the foundation and make sure that we're working on the nervous system first and foremost.
Yeah. In some of your past work, you've trained professionals on trauma-informed care. Mm-hmm. Would you be able to mention any of the things that you'd want people to understand about a trauma-informed approach?
Yeah, I love trauma-informed work. I think it's life-changing because I think a lot of people don't know how to respond when somebody's going through something challenging. You try to comfort that person who's going through a traumatic experience or a struggle by trying to make them feel better. And that's not what trauma-informed work is about, right? And often we try to make the other person feel better because we feel uncomfortable with the situation. People don't need to be fixed or to be guided to feel better in those moments. People need to be seen in their pain. People need to be seen in their struggle. That's how we heal, is by somebody sitting with us in the dark, not trying to pull us out of it when we need to be in it sometimes, to process it and to move through. And the greatest gift you can give somebody is to see them in that challenging place without trying to fix them or change them, but just say, wow, this is really hard what you're going through. We don't want to try to distract or try to change where the person is at. Trauma-informed work is meeting people where they're at with compassion and empathy and understanding, and just reflecting I see you. I get this is hard. I could imagine what you're going through is so challenging. So those are very trauma-informed responses. We need to look at our own discomfort and what our relationship is with discomfort. And if we can accept our own discomfort and our own struggle and have a positive relationship with our own challenging emotions, then it becomes easier to be with other people in theirs without trying to fix them or change them or rapidly move them through it.
There's also a piece coming through from that for me, that the client is the expert on their own experience. The client has that lived experience, expertise. And so they really might know in some way where they are, and they're going to know their situation better than we're going to. So we're not coming in as an expert. We're coming in as a partner, maybe.
Yeah. And we need to be monitoring the client's nervous system and where they're at. And their nervous system is going to guide how fast they could move through that grief or that healing, not us, right? And so when we could attune ourselves enough to the client's nervous system, like you're saying, they are their best guide. We're just there to support them through it at the pace that they can handle. everybody has different pacing depending on your inherent makeup, but also your environment and your capacity to do this work, because it is very deep work and yet it's so freeing.
I heard the best metaphor about this yesterday. I don't know if you've encountered Thomas Zimmerman. He does work in the area too. He likened it to a boat and a fish. Our protective factors are the boat and our resilience and all of the things that allow us to do the work. And the fish is the size of the trigger or the trauma that we're working through. And so if I'm going out in a canoe in the ocean, which is probably not recommended to begin with, and I'm catching a whale, well, my boat is not going to accommodate the whale. I'm going to need to build up some more tolerance before we ever mention that whale.
Yes.
If I'm in a little pond in my canoe fishing for a guppy, then my boat can accommodate that. But some people have tolerance the size of a yacht. Their boat is just massive. It can accommodate anything that we're beginning to work through, but we're not always there. And so that really is an important task that we have to be able to evaluate where can we start. And sometimes it might just be reinforcing that boat. There might be a lot of work around reinforcing that boat before we ever take it out to fish.
You know, there's a lot of personal development happening online now, and a lot of it goes way too fast for people's capacity. Trauma work sometimes can be really slow. And I get that people want to do things really fast in this day and age, but it's not actually sustainable when we jump faster than our nervous system has the capacity for. And so this whole notion of like, just do it anyway, you know, just feel the fear and move right through it. It's not always healthy to do things quickly. You may get results, but you don't know what's happening in your body that's getting damaged to get those results. And it's our job as practitioners to really take that into consideration and make sure that we are working in a way that's going to create the least amount of harm. And that's trauma-informed work.
Clients do often come in, and maybe this is a byproduct of marketing on social media, but they come in and say, how many sessions should this take? Like, what can I expect over the next few sessions? And certainly we can give an idea of what to expect, but we can't promise speed necessarily, because we really want to build that trust and that safety and provide only what the client is able to endure. Because to your point, it can be re-traumatizing to go through reliving something that you aren't yet equipped to experience. You were saying earlier, our bodies build these adaptive mechanisms. Sometimes that includes shutting things out that they're not ready to break off and work on. And so by pulling something in that you've adaptively shut out for now, it can be really re-traumatizing for somebody.
Absolutely. And a client could come in presenting as, oh, I just need to have healthier communication with my husband. How long is that going to take? Well, if it was just healthier communication, we could probably do that in a session or two. But once we lift the hood and look under it, oh, well, that healthy communication comes from, you know, your parent that was emotionally abusive and not valid. And we got to do all that healing too. So it's kind of impossible to give people a timeline, because when we lift that lid, like, there's layers. And we don't know the layers that are there until we start to uncover it. And so everybody has a different process because you're all dealing with a different operating system. And until we as practitioners can take time and look through those layers, it's hard to have a sense of how long it's going to take, because it looks different for everybody depending on your history.
And sometimes those layers have already been reconciled because of the work that you've done. So sometimes as things get uncovered, it's like, oh, I forgot that happened, but I can manage it. I can handle having that. The other piece to keep in mind is that just by bringing something up in a session, we need to be aware that that client has to then leave the session and return to their daily affairs. I think that's a piece that gets overlooked sometimes too. That might be the end of our work with them for the day, but now they're going off and living with the work that we did. So we want to make sure that we approached it in a way that allows them to do that and close off and wrap up and complete that work for the day so they're able to return to their other duties of parenting, work.
Yes, that's being a responsible trauma-informed practitioner. And that's why like all this talk of like healing trauma in a few days or in a weekend seminar, it could be very cathartic to open up those things. But closing it up and integrating it is even more important to do in a responsible way. And that's the problem I see with a lot of these personal development workshops and stuff is like, you're great at opening people up and showing them all the stuff. But what about the integration and the healthy closure so that they can go out and do things without having this wound still wide open? We need to be responsible and lift the lid of the pressure cooker little by little based on this person's life and what they can handle and integrate, or it becomes re-traumatizing, actually.
Yeah. What do you see with attachment in our animal and pet relationships?
Oh my gosh, I think it's like almost one of the biggest ways you could see it. Have you ever watched the dog whisperer, Caesar? He's like, I love him. Like he's like the best because he talks about this. It's usually the owner and how your nervous system is operating around how your dog's behavior is going to be. So if your dog is really anxious or your dog is aggressive, you need to look at the relationship that you have with that dog in becoming the dog's leader. And you can't be a healthy leader if you have attachment wounds. You have to have a secure attachment style in order to gain the respect and be able to lead the animal in a healthy way and have the animal feel safe and secure. Again, the animal's co-regulating off of you. Yes, everybody has their inherent personalities. Dogs do as well. And you will be the best possible leader you can be if you have a secure and healthy attachment style.
Oh, I love that. That's some of what animal-assisted therapists or equine-assisted therapists, they're doing as well. That makes so much sense. That having done that work to regulate your nervous system can go so far in any future training you might have with your pet or in helping to have them regulated as well.
That's right. That's right. Because we're always co-regulating with the other people and animals around us. And so if you're not aware of what's happening inside of you, you will take on the energy of whoever else or what other animal is in the room. So you have to be aware of your own energy and nervous system responses so that you could at least be operating in your healthiest form. And then that gives your animals, your children, the people around you a better opportunity to regulate with that secure energy. I want to mention in relationship work how important attachment stuff is, because a lot of relationship work, again, is like dealing with the symptoms and very strategic. And I think attachment work in relationships is life-changing. It's like you don't have to work with all the symptoms and strategy if you can go back and work with the attachments and create more secure attachment styles in both partners. Doing that first, that bottom-up work that you were talking about, really, in my clinical experience, is so much more effective.
Can you think of an example about how you've seen that change a relationship dynamic?
So when we talk about classic anxious partner and avoidant partner, having them understand that they're not fighting each other for attention, but they both have these different kinds of attachment styles that actually attracted them to each other, most likely. And if they can understand their own attachment and where that came from and start doing the somatic work and the attachment work that we talked about, then their relationship is going to look totally different because they're going to each be more securely attached to themselves and not be mirroring and acting out their attachment wounds with each other. So I love to work with partners on creating their own secure attachment first and foremost to themselves, and then dealing with the upper level issues that come from not having that secure attachment in each individual.
Yeah, that makes sense. So often someone who is experiencing insecure attachment and how that feels within themselves is then looking to a partner to provide that sense of security. And if they were able to get to a point where they felt that security just in existing, then they wouldn't maybe be relying on the partner to satisfy that. And they might pick a partner that is a little more forthcoming with some of that anyway. But to just duplicate that process of seeking out a response and then getting it or not getting it over time happens as a result of their insecure attachment to begin with.
Absolutely. And if you're teaching somebody that has anxious attachment how to communicate in a healthy way without teaching them how to regulate their nervous system first, it's still going to come across anxious and push the other person away. And so you have to work, again, from the inside out by teaching them first to feel secure and then communicate from that secure place, because there's an energy even in our communication. And if that person hasn't learned to position themselves internally in a healthy, secure, calm way, it doesn't matter how much communication skills you give them. They're still going to be coming from an anxious energy, and that somatic experience transmits into the communication. That makes sense? Yeah.
I think for a lot of people that want to know, how can I get into this next phase of dating where I could really find a long-term partner, it feels like some of this work.
Love working with dating women and men. Like, it's my favorite, because let's not recreate the trauma, right? You can have a healthy relationship if you do this work on yourself first and choose the right partner. But if you're not in that secure attachment yourself, you're most likely to choose a partner that also has attachment issues. And then it's like this chaotic cycle that happens.
Yeah. To switch gears a little bit, what is something you're consuming right now? Media, food, or drink?
Media, food, or drink. Oh, I'm watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I just
Oh,
that.
yes.
I love her character so much.
She's so great, so funny, so resilient.
And
Yes.
just like has so much zest for life, and like to work on herself and like keep moving forward, and her energy just changes the whole room, right?
Yeah.
In the cutest way, in the cutest way.
It is such a charming show. I love that too. Yes, that's a great one. And final question, where can folks find you?
Yes, I'm on Psychology Today, Melissa Lapides. I'm also on Instagram, Get Securely Attached, and my website is being built, getsecurelyattached.com.
Awesome. Okay, and I'll add all of those to the show notes for anyone who wants to follow up with Melissa. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we connected.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Self Careapist Podcast. If you did, please subscribe and feel free to leave a review. You can also follow along at the Self Careapist on Instagram, or head to lorainmoorehead.com/podcast to grab a free copy of your own learning map worksheet to help track all of the tools and strategies you're interested in learning more about. See you next Wednesday.